ladies and gentlemen. As we are about to begin, please be seated. Kindly switch your mobile phone to the silent mode and thank you for your cooperation. We'll begin in a minute. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Charlotte, your MC for the day. A very warm welcome on behalf of Taiwan Tech Arena, TTA, and our distinguished speakers to all our guests here today with us. Welcome to TTA Global Forum in InnoVEX 2023, where we invite the world's top investors, startup ecosystem, and research center to share on their experience in contributing to the success and growth of entrepreneurship. Without further ado, let us now invite Mr. Kuang-Hung, Chief Secretary of National Science and Technology Council, NSTC, to deliver a welcome remark. Let us welcome Mr. Lang.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the National Science and Technology Council, I would like to welcome all of you to today's TTA Global Forum. As we all know that Taiwan maintains world-class hardware capabilities in the tech industry. By combining our strong R&D capabilities and the software technologies, we are embracing the emerging global AI technologies. Our eventual goal is to create a positive impact and achieve AI for better life. The National Science and Technology Council established the Taiwan AI Center of Excellence in this March. It integrates hardware, software, R&D resources, collaborate with our official departments and the industries to develop AI governance standards. In the future, the AI Center of Excellence will serve as an international cooperation platform in Taiwan, promoting the human-centered AI foundations to shape Taiwan into a global AI hub. We are honored to have our leading experts and entrepreneurs of AI area to join today's event. They will share their insights into the evaluation of AI and its potential influence in different industries. I believe we will be inspired with the thoughts about the AI trends. I also encourage everyone to benefit from the InnoVEX exhibition and visit our TTA pavilion. Our theme this year is Pre-Unicorn. We have assembled 26 tech startup teams. They forward-looking techniques at precise health, AI, food technology, and the cybersecurity fields will impress all the visitors. Lastly, I wish today's forum a successful and fruitful outcome. May you all have a fulfilling and delightful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your warm welcome remark. Please remain on the stage for a group photo taking. Thank you so much. Now let us invite today's guests onto the stage for a group photo taking. Let us welcome Julie Mathis, the General Manager, Vice President of Tenstorrent, Inc. Ming-Yu, Section Chief, Department of Academia, Industry Collaboration, and Science Affairs from NSTC. Also, Ming-Yu Liu, the Senior Director of Research from NVIDIA. Kai Huang, the co-founder of Guitar Hero, onto the stage. Thank you, and we will pass you a hand sign. Also, Phil Chen, the General Partner of Raise Capital, on stage. Also, our Jameson Shi, the co-founder and CEO of Walk.co. Welcome. We also have Nitin Dahad from Embedded.com and EE Times. And last but not least, John Wang from the Business Next Media Corp onto the stage. Thank you. All right, so I see all of you have a really nice hand sign that says TTA Global. Can we look into the camera first while we count down 3, 2, 1? So when we count down 3, 2, 1, we will say TTA Global together, all right? 3, 2, 1. TTA Global. Can you show your best smile? Let's take another one. 3, 2, 1. TTA Global. Thank you all so much. This is such a wonderful photo and our stuff. Please help to retrieve the hand sign. Okay, they want you to show a thumbs up. So do you have an extra hand to show a thumbs up, please? Okay, we sure do. Okay, 3, 2, 1, thumbs up, TTA Global. All right, we have a wonderful picture to remember this moment. And our staff, can you please help to retrieve the hand sign back? So we'll move on to our fireside chat. And thank you all our guests once again who joined us today. Kindly return to your seats with the extra care. Thank you. Thank you. It's such a great photo. Next up, we will have a fireside chat discussing on the topics of exploring the competitiveness of generative AI. And let me introduce our moderator for today, who is Nitin, Dahad, the editor-in-chief for Embedded.com and corresponding at EE Times, with profound experience in the semiconductor field, for a dialogue with Julie Mathis, the general manager and vice president of Tenstorrent Inc., a North American-based unicorn startup that builds world-class AI, machine learning, and RISC-V hardware and software technology. Let us welcome our moderator, Nitin, Dahad, and our panelist, Julie Mathis, on stage for a fireside chat. Welcome. All right, I'll hand over the stage to you now, Nitin and Julie.
Thank you. So, Julie, hello.
This would help. Hi.
And thank you all for joining us on this panel. On this fireside chat, rather. So I'm Nitin Dahad, write for EE Times magazine, and Julie is with Tenstorrent. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Julie.
All right. Well, you guys all heard, my name's Julie Mathis. I'm at Tenstorrent, and I've been there I joined earlier this year, but I've had my entire career in the tech industry. I was at AMD for 12 years, where I led the consumer client business. And then AI and all the curiosity and all the cool things that are happening got the best of me, and I joined Tenstorrent.
You said it got the best of you, so why Tenstorrent? I mean, there's others as well.
Yeah, there were certainly others. I mean, I was fascinated, and I think it's just such a rapidly evolving industry that I think it's going to be fun to be part of it. But there are two main leading factors there. Jim Keller, who I was fortunate enough to bring his products to market at AMD, is the CEO of Tenstorrent. You've probably heard of him. He's got a very good pedigree in the chip world. And I think the combination of what Tenstorrent has from a CPU architecture as well as a RISC-V licensing makes it a really sustainable business, and I think they're going to do some really neat things in the world.
Well, we're into CPUs and RISC-V. I'm at the RISC-V Summit next week. But let's talk about generative AI. And what we're going to talk about on this fireside chat is around the opportunities for the semiconductor industry from the explosion in generative AI. So let's backtrack a bit. How fast is generative AI taking off compared to other market trends? Every speech I've been to here is on generative AI. Maybe everybody was briefed to talk about generative AI.
Yeah, I've been surprised and impressed by how many times I've heard that phrase so far this week. But look, I think that it is. We haven't seen anything like it before. How quickly generative AI is exploding. If you think about ChatGPT, within 5 days of going live, had 1 million users. To put that into a little perspective, Twitter, it took them 2 years to reach that same milestone. And I think we're going to continue to see this level of speed of adoption, especially as more and more people understand the value that AI can drive and the innovation that can happen.
So the more I listen to people this week, the more I wonder whether we're really at a top of a hype cycle. Is it a hype cycle or is it real? And what are the things you're seeing?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely real. I think it's a hype cycle because, frankly, I think we've been hearing about AI for years, right? It's been like, AI's coming. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, people were like, this thing could be really cool or it could be really scary. And it's just very quickly evolved from something that was theoretical to something that people are seeing as a part of their everyday lives.
Before we get into the discussion on the opportunities, maybe you can tell me a little bit. I mean, the keynote yesterday was from Jensen Wang, CEO and founder of NVIDIA. Probably everybody in this room knows what NVIDIA is. Tell us about Tenstorrent, so at least we get some context and perspective.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So Tenstorrent is uniquely positioned. NVIDIA, they've done amazing things, and we would like to figure out how to monetize what they're doing as well. But the really unique thing about Tenstorrent is that we're building chips that are made for AI, not leveraging GPUs that were made for other purposes, and then they just found out, oh, this can run AI really well. So we're purpose-building chips, making sure that we've got the software that we're building up from the grounds up to really ensure that not only do you have a really performant experience with AI, but it's power efficient and it's open source, which is one of the key tenets of what we're going to drive at Tenstorrent.
So we'll come to open source in a little while, but power efficiency. So everybody's talking about sustainability. Is it architectural? What is it that you're doing that makes it better than others?
Yeah, it's a combination of factors. One element is the architecture. One element will be the process node that will manufacture the chips in. And the other aspect is the software. Better utilization, better peering, so you don't have to have your power usage up to get that same level of performance.
Okay. Coming to the ecosystem, what do you think? I heard some crazy figures this week about AI hardware companies, or more generative AI hardware companies. But let's start with AI hardware companies. How many are out there, do you think, building chips for generative AI?
So from a chip perspective, I think you're right. I think the overall ecosystem is probably thousands of different companies. But from a chip-specific perspective, there's probably between 150 to 200 in the world. Now, we are not exactly sure how many are in China, so that number could range quite a bit. But I think what's really interesting about the hardware companies we have out there, some are doing just inference and low-level inference, and some are designing chips that can do inference and training. And I think where we see the future of AI going, and really to get that customizable experience, you've got to have that combination of inference and training so that customers can design and build the models that they want to drive.
And is it just about the technology and the inference and the training, or are one phrase I heard this morning from one of the, I'm not going to mention because too much competition, but one phrase I heard from a CEO this morning, it's basically about enabling people who don't program to do software. So it's not just about that, and maybe that's where the number increases in terms of the AI hardware companies.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, I think there's certainly that use case out there, but one of the things I love about AI and the way it's growing is I won't call them happy accidents, but we're finding that people can do some clever unintended things. And so it's not just about being able to run something that's out there. It's having something that you can customize and really develop to do what you're trying to serve customers for.
And would you segment them other than inference and training? Are there like application focus as well?
I think we'll get there. I don't think we're there today. I think there is not enough different types of hardware, different software stocks, and different models that are out there to really be that focus. But I certainly think application focus will be coming very soon.
Okay, now this one is going to be dear to your heart. Will open source play a role in the explosion of generative AI? And I think probably not just generative AI, AI in general, but let's talk about generative AI since that's a theme here.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I mentioned earlier that open source is one of the core tenets of what we're doing at Tenstorrent. We're doing that for a couple of reasons. One, I think we know what we don't know. And we know when we've seen companies use closed proprietary systems, the ability to innovate, the ability to collaborate really goes down. Going back to the conversation about how fast this industry is evolving, having that open source ability is really going to allow people to be more flexible in what they build and what they do. I think if we go back to, how companies are using AI, if you don't have that open source capability, companies are really giving customers two choices. One, you can have a subset of a small amount of models that customers can use and deploy because that's how they can manage existing hardware with existing software. Or you can take the other approach where you say, we will custom build software to match the existing hardware in a white glove type of service. But that's incredibly hard. It's incredibly time consuming, and it's very resource rich. So we really think that open source is the wave because things are evolving so quickly. It gives customers the opportunity to have another choice.
Now, open source, actually, let's make sure we understand for the audience as well. What are we talking about when you talk about open source? Because it's going to be open source hardware, open source software. One of the arguments I come from places like the RISC-V space where people all talked about open source and then, well, that meant, well, you might break it, you might do this, whatever.
Yep.
That's the hardware, but then the software, it's like Linux. So then,
Yep.
Where are we heading when we talk about open source here?
Yeah, for us at Tenstorrent, we actually want open source software and open source hardware. Because I think AI is very unique in the way you've got to have that parallelization between how you're building your hardware and how the software is going to operate to really maximize the performance you're going to get out of that hardware.
So when you say open source, so you will provide both the hardware and software elements which can be openly, freely licensed, and then how will your business model work then?
Yeah, so the software will be open sourced. From the AI core perspective, we likely will license some of our core CPUs, but I think right now we're focused on licensing the RISC-V, and the AI hardware part will come later.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to grill you on that.
No, that's great.
How fast is innovation happening in machine learning?
Just like everything else in this industry, whether it's the adoption, whether it's how often we say generative AI, extremely fast. And I think this is pretty unique in that, you look at phones or you look at PCs, people use something, they get used to using that, and even if something new comes along, they don't necessarily throw out whatever they've been using just to jump to the next new thing. AI is a completely new game. When new models come out, people are completely abandoning old models and going to the new ones because they see that there's either something new that they can do, better performance, and we really think that's going to require this pace of innovation to continue to drive.
Well, I'm going to, before I go on to others, I was just going to ask if anybody in the audience has a question, save it and I'll ask. So please do. I'm sure there might be people with questions to ask of Julie. But so this innovation is happening. You get new, like ChatGPT 3 and then 4. And what happens when the new models evolve? Can industry keep pace? It's going to be hard if you built something for something specific and then you suddenly see, oh, something else has gone on. Is there going to be some level of upward compatibility, or what's happening?
Yeah, that is the perfect question, because that is why we firmly believe that open source is the path of the future. There will not be the ability to probably backwards compatible a lot of things without sacrificing something, whether that's performance, whether that's some level of capability. And so I think the focus needs to be on how are we going to develop things that are going to be future-proofed so that not only can hardware vendors, but the software vendors, those companies, can keep up with that pace of innovation.
Yeah, I suppose it comes later in the next question, but when it comes to generative AI, is the hardware driving the software or the software driving the hardware? I suppose if I think about it, it's the hardware, you need the hardware, but then the software can help drive that hardware. Where do you start at Tenstorrent, and where should the industry be looking as maybe both as customers, but also I don't know, your competitors?
Yeah. I'd like to just answer that question and say yes, but I'm guessing that's probably not descriptive enough of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
It is a really tough question, and it's tough because not only is the software evolving quickly and the hardware evolving quickly, but what people are doing with it is evolving so quickly. So to be very transparent, we started at Tenstorrent developing hardware. We've got some of the best chip designers in the world. We've licensed RISC-V and have been really focused on making sure that we've got very performant, very innovative CPU cores. The challenge is that as the models evolve, as software evolves, the hardware can't always keep up. And so what we've learned and what we're driving going forward is developing that software and the hardware in parallel so that you can quickly figure out, oh, perhaps I could get, maybe it's more power efficiency, maybe it's more overall, flops, making sure that we're developing that in parallel so that we're making decisions all the way through that design process.
Now, there's actually another element to that question, maybe, which we didn't think about. And it came to me when we're talking to Jensen Wang this morning. Jensen basically talks about the software, generative AI generating the software to run the hardware. Is that the scenario that maybe could be imagined here as well?
I think it's certainly a path that we can foresee going down, but I don't think it's the only
I'm
path.
not holding you to it. I'm just asking whether that's a line of thinking or whether it's something that should be thought about.
It's a good question. It is something that we're thinking about every day, and as we're designing products, our goal at this point is to get products, both the software and the hardware, in consumers' hands as soon as possible and start developing together so we know how we're going to answer that question better in the future.
Now, I'm not going to preempt your investment round. You're a unicorn already, billion-dollar valuation. But just when are your customers going to get into their hands?
Very soon. So we've got some announcements coming actually later this week that I would love to do a sneak preview.
I know, I'm itching to.
There are all these rules about that, so I will refrain from doing that. But you'll start hearing very soon about some specific customer engagements. Some select customers do have our hardware in hands today, but I think you'll expect by the end of the year for more broad availability of our products.
And again, I'm not trying to go into any NDA stuff, but what are the things your customers that you've got early hands on are saying that you're doing differently to what's out there on the market?
I'd say there are a few things, but I think if I had to highlight one, it's the customizable ability of what our hardware can drive with their specific applications. And so being able to be more open about the software stack, being more open on how the hardware is developed, being open at the very beginning of a development process saves time and it also allows for innovation. And so I think that's where our customers are today. I think not ignoring that NVIDIA is obviously being extremely successful in this segment. And so it's what many customers already know. And so our job right now is saying, here's what we can do differently. And I think we're going to learn together as we go down that path.
Now, every startup has a vision, and I know you're not the CEO or the founder, but yeah, what's Tenstorrent's vision in this whole space, especially, well, two things. Yeah, first of all, your company as a whole, but also generative AI.
Yep. I'd say the easier one to answer is a company as a whole, and it's to make sure that we're developing best-in-class AI hardware and making it open source so that we can continue to drive innovation in the industry. The other side of that is our RISC-V core and the licensing we can do there. We think there's going to be, we've already seen that begin, but probably a very continued increase in desire for RISC-V custom solutions. And so for Tenstorrent, that makes for a very nice package because until you get hardware out the door and you have revenue coming in from there, you have cash flow that you're driving from the licensing. So I think from an overall company, kind of that's where we are. And why that excites me is because we talked about earlier, there are hundreds of people creating AI hardware. having that flexibility, having both business lines to drive, gives us time to really understand what's happening with the industry and how we best develop chips that are going to serve the overall market.
Do we have any itching questions? Otherwise, I'll go on. There is one, I think, hand I see. I don't know if we can get a mic. Oh, are you pointing or are you asking a question? Gentleman over there. Okay. Excuse me, sir? Oh, no, maybe he was just pointing. Okay, I'll move on. So we see more and more companies building their own AI hardware. I mean, it started with the hyperscalers, but it's going beyond that.
Yeah.
Why is this happening, and how do you see this trend evolving?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, honestly, I think this trend is even outside of AI. We've seen Apple, Amazon, Meta, many different organizations start to do some custom in-house building. I think there are 3 elements there. Are we okay on time?
Plenty of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think first and foremost, we've seen in the past, ARM was the most often chosen solution if you wanted to design some custom products. The challenge now is companies want to own their own designs. They want to have custom solutions, and they don't want to just license that. They actually want to own that in-house so that they continue to iterate on that and build from there. I think we're going to see that same type of model apply to the AI space, and that is why we're seeing so many companies develop in-house. It comes back to that pairing of the hardware and the software, and being able to develop that in parallel really drives a very different, end solution than trying to do that picking something off the shelf. Now at Tenstorrent, what we want to do is eventually license our AI cores, because even though a lot of different companies want to own their own technology, they don't necessarily want to start from the bottom. They want to have something that they're starting a few steps ahead of that they
Yes.
can develop and drive.
So are you getting those types of companies talking to you as well?
Absolutely. Yep.
And is it one of the things, is what's out there on the market too expensive, or is it just too rigid as a structure, or what is it that it makes them want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, certainly expense and availability has been a challenge, and that leads people, I think, wanting to look for other options. But I also think there's a strong desire not to be single-sourced. I think we've all learned some painful lessons during COVID, and even just having options as you're developing your product, whatever that may be. Having a dual-source strategy is really important for companies to have the best approach to the market. And
so you'll be pursuing a licensing model, a typical
Yep.
fabless model.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And
Okay.
so, I think we'll see as that evolves. But the end goal is to make sure that we've got different types of silicon that we can license, as well as hardware we can put in people's hands.
Is this a good time for you as a startup? I know you're sort of looking at funding and whatever. We're in a startup forum here, TTA.
Yep.
So InnoVEX. So tell me, what has been your experience? I know you've been a short time, but
Yep.
what's been your experience in the startup world? You're working with a superstar, I guess, in Jim Keller, but that might have helped. Do you need a superstar to get funding?
I think in today's economic environment, it's extremely beneficial. I think, maybe even a year ago, it was a little bit of a different situation in trying to secure funding. But yes, having Jim Keller at the helm has potentially made us not have to follow some of the traditional startup rules. I'd say overall, I think right now it is a challenging position to be in the market, especially because there are so many competitors in this particular segment coming to the forefront. Now, what I think is going to happen, I go back to the days of when the GPUs were being created, right? There were probably, 30, 40 different companies that were developing GPUs. Over time, that's consolidated, and now we're really down to 2. We've got NVIDIA, we've got AMD, who are making discrete GPUs. And I have a feeling we're going to see the same evolution happen with AI. But how long that's going to take is I think, anyone's guess.
So myself and my colleague, Sally Ward-Foxton on the EE Times, we've interviewed quite a few AI startups. And the number of times I've heard from CEOs saying we want to be the next NVIDIA beta. Is that what Jim's goal is?
I mean, look, I think we all see the TAM. I mean, just even looking at last quarter NVIDIA earnings, how much the AI hardware segment's exploding. Absolutely, we want to be a profitable business and we want to take a cut of that share. I don't know if I won't speak for Jim, but I'll say I don't think that's necessarily the driving focus. It's really about, this is the first time in a long time that we've had a technology that's moving this fast, that's changing so rapidly. And I think it's curiosity in a lot of ways, and it's what's going to happen as this technology continues to mature.
It's so pervasive, I think, and I think we've been hearing all kinds of things this week, but also in recent months, how technology just underpins everything. So I'll come to the audience again. Anybody have any burning questions for Julie or about AI or about startups? Is there anybody? Susan, can we get a microphone? So when you speak, please say your name and who you're from as well. And
thank you, Susan from E-Times Taiwan.
Oh, it's not on.
Okay, Susan from E-Times Taiwan. My question is kind of easy, simple question. We know generative AI.
We can't hear you. I think we need to.
Can you hear? Okay.
No, yeah.
Sounds like online meetings. We know generative AI still have not that perfect yet. Since it's with some flaws or some mistake, even it always generates the answers looks quite perfect. But if you really check the answers, maybe not that perfect, and maybe some with mistakes. So my question is more like, how can we make generative AI or AI technologies more correct, accurate, or can really help us? Thank you.
How can you make it more accurate? And that's part of the whole large language model training. But tell me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That I was mentioning earlier, I was talking about the companies that are building for low-level inference and companies that are building for training. And it's that training portion that is so critically important. You have to have that ability for that machine learning for the training. I will say, I think we're seeing the accuracy increase, not quite as fast as the overall adoption rate, but I do see the accuracy improving. It's pretty wild as the bots start learning how quickly that they'll improve their accuracy. So I think, even going from when ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4 came out, it was like 3 months, we're going to see that accuracy start to continue to decrease in time, just like you see new models coming out. So I wish I could give you an end date. I don't know, but probably sooner than we all expect.
Will there be a benchmark for levels of accuracy, or is there one already? I'm not sure.
There isn't. In fact, benchmarking is one of the, I'd say, more challenging aspects of this because there's no standard.
It can be objective, can't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, subjective.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is great because you can say that you're the best at everything. But I think it is something that will have to happen eventually to give customers an ability to look at different solutions. Looking at the PC world, which, where I came from, you had Windows, you had, DirectX 11. Those were driving standards. That was driving some level of conformity. So then you could develop benchmarks that would say, this is why, Z is better or X is worse. We don't have that for AI yet. And I think it's going to be a little ways off as we see maybe some consolidation of the vendors out there.
And is the accuracy really dependent on the data you input, obviously? So the more data you put in, the more accurate it gets. So is it just a case of putting more into it?
Yeah, putting more into it, the more data it gets, the more accurate data sets that it's getting. And then that feedback loop of saying like, oh, this was right, and making sure that you're getting the, the smart bots to stick around and the not ones to not stick around.
So I mean, that's for the AI bit. For the generative AI, what's extra? Or is it just the sort of feedback loop?
Yeah, it's the feedback loop.
Okay. So answer your question, Susan. Okay. Anybody else a question? Well, we have one from Grace.
Yeah, because this is Taiwan, and we all know Taiwan has the more university students, they learning more, study more hardware. And from your point of view, because we know just now you introduced the Tenstorrent is the hardware software company. So how will you see the next step, for encouraging the Taiwan university students? Do you think the software is, because we know software defined, the vehicle of software design something. So will you encourage the student study more software, or hardware still be prioritized before the software? Okay, thank you.
I'm so glad you asked, and I didn't even pay her to ask this question, but it leads in really nicely to something I did want to talk about. I think to answer your question first specifically before I take it for my own benefit, yes, I think what we want to encourage is learning software first, but pairing that with the knowledge of how the hardware is built, because I think that gives a better education and it gives a better understanding of how to build going forward. The self-serving reason, I'm very glad you asked, is that's one of the key focus areas. We look at the products that we want to bring to market. We know that we're the little guys starting against a very big competitor, and so that's going to be one of the areas that we focus first, making sure that we can get our hardware and open source software into universities' hands, enabling professors to learn how to teach to that. And I think it's going to help not only Tenstorrent, but the overall segment.
Well, thank you, and I've just been given a signal that our time's up. So, so Julie, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank
Julie
you.
Mathis, Tenstorrent. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nitin and Julie, for such a wonderful and insightful conversation to let us know the future evolution and development of the generative AI. Thank you once again. Please return to your seats with extra care. Thank you. All right, up next, we'll be having a panel discussion on generative AI transforming engine of various industries. Before we move on to the panel, let me do a short introduction on the moderator and the panelists of the upcoming session. We have John Wang from Business Next Media Corp as the moderator to lead this panel discussion. And also our panelists today, Ming-Yu, the Senior Director of Research from NVIDIA, whose research focuses on the deep generating models and their application in the content creation. We also have Kuang-Hung, the co-founder of Guitar Hero, published by Rec Octane, later became one of the handful of the billion-dollar video games and become the fastest growing video game franchise, over 1 billion in sales. And we have Phil Chen, the founding partner of the Raise Capital, a global VC fund who also founded and leads the Exodus project at HTC, the world's first smartphone built for the decentralized internet of Web3. And we also have Jamson Shi, the CEO, co-founder of Wap.co, who has started 4 consecutive ventures, attracting interest and partnership from major companies in both the United States and China. All right, now let us introduce and welcome our moderator and panelists on stage for this panel discussion on generative AI transforming engine of various industries. Welcome John, Ming-Yu, Kai, Jamson, and Phil. All right, please take a seat, and I will pass the stage to John. John, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this panel discussion. Before we came up, we actually had a little discussion in that small room about the question we're going to discuss. But actually, I think the panelists have more questions for me than I have for them. So, before we start the questions, I will have I will give each of them 10 minutes to introduce more about themselves and what their company is doing. And each will come with a topic. So I'll start with Ming-Yu, okay, Senior Director of Research from NVIDIA. And his topic for his 10 minutes short talk will be NVIDIA Picasso in generative AI. So Ming-Yu.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Microphone test? Okay, great. So my name is Ming-Yu. I'm originally from Taiwan. And now I'm leading a research team in the United States in the NVIDIA headquarters, focusing on generative AI. And in this GTC, which took place in March online, NVIDIA announced something called NVIDIA Picasso. It's our Gen AI effort in the visual space of content creation. So in this, I prepared a set of slides to go over this Picasso and also tell you what we have been working on. So in GDC, we announced something called NVIDIA AI Foundations. So there are three main things in AI foundations. One is this NeMo, which is NVIDIA's large language model. And BioNeMo, it's a Gen AI for biologists, medicines, many medical applications. And also Picasso is for the visual space. So we have something called NVIDIA AI Enterprise. In the bottom, you can see this, there are different cloud service providers. We have Microsoft, Google Cloud, Oracle, and now we also have AWS. So what happened is those companies, they purchase our GPUs and provide services to their customers. But different companies have different software stack, right? Today you are familiar with AWS, you build your tools there. And tomorrow you want to move to Azure and you have to kind of learn a new tool again. There's a transition cost. So what we envision is that all of these companies, they are using our GPU. Can we build another layer on top of it? So that when you transition from one service provider to another, you can use the same software. And you can kind of minimize your development costs. And of course, we are the people that's most familiar with the GPU that we built. So we have know-how to accelerate applications. So we provide something called NVIDIA AI Enterprise for people who choose our kind of cloud in the cloud to help them to accelerate their applications. So then on top of it is the NeMo, BioNeMo, and Picasso. So NVIDIA is a platform provider, right? We sell people this supercomputer data center to build their Gen AI application. But not all the companies have this Gen AI capability. They may not have the scientists that can develop models. They may not have the engineering capability to kind of curate data or monitor the training or doing the deployments. So NVIDIA, this AI foundation more like a foundry, right? So we kind of provide service for different kind of enterprise to help them build Gen AI. So you could have data, but you don't have scientists. You could be like just a company have everything. You have the data scientists, and we just sell you the supercomputer to do the training. So we try to provide all, make our platform available to all the people who want to participate in this Gen AI race. Yeah. So think about we now very familiar with ChatGPT or kind of Google's bot. They are general purpose chatbots, right? You can ask them anything and they can give you answers. But what more valuables are chatbots that's specific for a particular domain? Let's say if you are AT&T and you have many customers calling your call center trying to get some guidance how to enable particular services, right? So you have all the menus, information about how you're gonna answer to your customer for these particular questions. But those information are not available in the web. So you cannot use ChatGPT to get those questions, right? So you need something that's customized for your data. And you don't want to share the data with other people. So with NVIDIA NeMo, you can purchase our SuperPod data center and use the software we provide and build your ChatGPT in-house for your particular applications. So we are envision this kind of applications. And similarly for BioNemo, but specialized for the medical domain. Picasso, what I've been working on is interesting in the sense that it's a visual space. And visual space has other questions. So we are targeting 3 foundation models. The first one is text-to-image. You may be familiar with Stable Diffusion or Mid-Journey, and we are targeting the same kind of foundation model for visual space, for image generation. We also have something for video generation. So you can use text to generate video or do video to video. We also have something for 3D generation. You enter a text, a DSLR photo of 3D model of the Colosseum, and we can generate 3D model for them, right? And the scenes that are different to what you see, what you have used with Stable Diffusion and Mid-Journey is our model are trained with enterprise-grade data, with copyright clean data, and we compensate the people who contribute the data set to the Gen AI model, right? So what Stable Diffusion did was to download a lot of images from the internet. Some of them are owned by, most of them are owned by others, and train a model and provide services. Midjourney pretty much doing the same. We believe that the people who produce the photos to train the model should be compensated in this Gen AI world. So we team up with a company like Getty Images, Adobe, and Shutterstock to train clean Gen AI model with their clean data. And those companies, they share the revenue to their photo contributors. So we believe this is the right thing to do in this Gen AI world. And similarly for video and 3D, right? So 3D is particularly interesting to us. NVIDIA's first business is help people to render 3D contents for video games, for movie. And we are very passionate about this metaverse future, right? So metaverse is pretty much a 3D internet. Everybody has this 3D virtual world, maybe the digital twin of the real world or some virtual world they create, right? And the NVIDIA Omniverse is a browser to browse the virtual world, right? But metaverse has been, this been kind of keyword for multiple years. And one reason we believe that why metaverse is still not so popular is that we don't have enough 3D content to build this meta world, right? So in the currently, if you want to build some high quality 3D world, you need to hire many 3D artists to kind of build those assets. And we envision that with this Gen AI, we can produce content in 3D content in kind of efficiently, right? So you just name some concept you want, Colosseum, and then you have 3D model, right? If we can bring this to the mainstream, everybody can build their virtual world, and then can create all kind of new applications. All right, so that's why we work on text to image, text to video, and text to 3D. Although it's text to something, but actually it's just a foundation model. Once you have this model built, it can be like image to 3D or many different applications. So NVIDIA Picasso have the 3 main components. We are targeting 3 different kind of audience, customers, partners. The first kind are people who had the capability to train their own generative AI models, maybe like Adobe. They have their photos, they have their generative AI expert, and then train the model. And they can leverage NVIDIA's CUDA Ninja, to optimize their inference pipeline, and then they can kind of provide service to their customer. And there are second kind of customer who have data, but they don't have AI scientists. Like Getty Images, Shutterstock, they are mostly marketplace for visual content, and we help them train their Gen AI model using their data and provide, let them deploy in their website. And also there are something called fine tuning, right? So There are people, maybe like game studios, they don't have a lot of content, but they have some kind of stylized content they want to kind of create similar assets. And we help them, they have a small quantity of data, but they can use those foundation model we train with like a getting image or short star to fine tune and provide a Gen AI model with their style. Am I using 10 minutes already?
Yeah, already over 10 minutes.
Okay,
so
sorry.
maybe we can just save that part for Q&A.
Okay, so.
Okay, so
It's pretty much
maybe
done.
just a quick conclusion.
Yeah, I can just quickly show the videos. Is that playing? Yeah, so these are the kind of videos showing the images we can create with our model. And you might saw this cat in yesterday Johnson's keynote. And this is for video generation. And this is for 3D generation. So type in the text, and then you have the 3D model. Yeah, and it's an API, so easily, it can be easily integrated into different applications. And it can be imported to different tool chains, Photoshop, Maya, different 3D browsers to build your virtual world. All right, I guess I should stop here.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Ming-Yu. NVIDIA is a great company not only in product design, but also in doing presentations. So from Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO's keynote speech at Computex yesterday, to Ming-Yu's presentation of 3D modeling, which is an important part of generative AI. We can see that. So next, I would like to have Kai Huang, the co-founder of Guitar Hero, to share with us what he sees regarding the funding and investment trends in AI startups and how to secure and optimize capital. Kai, please.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Kai Huang. I am the co-founder of Red Octane, which is the creator of Guitar Hero, the video game. I would consider myself a serial entrepreneur. I've started 5 companies so far. I've spent most of my time in the game industry, so that's the industry that I know the most. But in Taiwan, 2 years ago during the pandemic, I helped start 886 Studios with 12 other partners, including fellow panelists Phil and Jameson here. 886 Studios is a venture studio. A big part of our goal is to take our experience as founders. All of us partners have founded companies before and exited. Take our experience and help build up the Taiwan startup ecosystem. So working with a lot of Taiwanese-based startups and startups that have ties with Taiwan. One of the programs that we're focused on this year is called 886 Velocity. So it's our newest program. And 886 Velocity is a pre-accelerator program. So our goal is to help as many startups as we can, Taiwanese startups, get into some of the top accelerators in the world. And that's one of the ways that we think we can really help accelerate the Taiwan startup ecosystem. So we're looking for teams to join our program. So if you know any great startups, please point them our way. My experience with AI and the funding perspective comes from a couple of different areas, I would say. One is as a venture studio, working with startups. We're seeing a lot of startups that are doing various things across the board, from hard tech and technology and hardware, literally hardware, all the way through software and applications. So it's a really exciting time. We're seeing a lot of funding clearly go into the space. What's really unique, I think, that I've seen, for me at least, in my experience, that I've never quite seen an adoption of a technology go so fast, right? Literally, AI's kind of been around, but it's always been in the background in research. But really just in the last, call it 6 months, right? In the last half year with generative AI and ChatGPT creating such a stir that now every startup is working on something AI related, or every company is, integrating AI. And so the opportunity becomes really large. And I'll use the gaming industry as an example, because that's kind of been my background. When I talk about just the super fast adoption and every single department being touched, right? This is not something that is just IT or tech or just marketing or just sales or just business development. Fundamentally, it's changing all aspects of the business. So from the game industry, how do we see it, right? And I think this is going to apply to a lot of different industries, most industries, but in particular, the content industry, right? Whether it's movies or music or games. Where I see this fundamentally changing, the category. Number one, game development, right, and software development. Clearly, generative AI is going to have a huge impact on game development from a coding standpoint, right? If you can have the fundamental building blocks built up so that you don't need to develop and redevelop all of this code, game development is going to go much, much faster. So one of the startups that we're working with, they're talking about trying to build 1,000 games a year, right? Which, if you've been in the game industry and you know the game industry, that's a really, today, historically, in the past, that's a really difficult task. Creating a great game takes a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort. Some of the AAA titles now, they'll cost upwards of $200 to $300 million in development costs, right, just to develop a game. So if you can speed up the coding and the product development from a gaming perspective, that's going to fundamentally, change the speed that we can deliver games at. Another area within the game industry that's going to be hugely impacted, art. A huge part of making games is developing art and artwork, and that's a big cost of that. And if you can start to use generative AI technology to not only speed up the process, but also be able to localize art in a way that you really couldn't do before at the same pace and speed, that's also going to fundamentally change the way that games are developed and how much time it takes to develop games. And a last part of the game industry that is going to have a huge impact on is also the music. Generative AI and creating music. And I think maybe some of you have seen other startups as well that are already working on, actually have tools already that help writers create lyrics and generate music. And they're using it as a tool to augment what they are already doing. So a lot of interesting things going on. So I think that's just a handful of ways that I see that AI is going to impact game industry and game development. And so you're going to see funding across not only all the startups that are creating the tools and the foundation for increasing AI adoption, but then within companies, every department is going to start to look at, how do we use AI to accelerate what we're doing? And so we're seeing funding, and I'm seeing funding across all of those different areas. Not only funding from VCs going into startups, but funding from companies going, how do we adopt and use this technology?
Okay, thank you, Kai. So next, I'd like to have Jameson Xu, co-founder of Multimedia, to share with his views on ethical considerations, which are a very pressing issue in this AI development implementation. So please, Jameson.
Thank you, John. Hello, my name is Jameson. Prior to being up here, I started several companies, first in the video game industry. Besides that, I've started design agencies, and I've also had a enterprise mobile company, and I think the ties with AI. Prior to this, I was on the board of a company called Lydia.ai. They do healthcare and insurance using AI to power the actuarial process. And so I learned a lot about AI through that process. Recently, we've started a company called WOD.co. WOD stands for Workout of the Day, so it's a fitness company, and we're building a workout sharing and tracking platform for athletes and coaches. And we're using AI to help generate workouts, to also help interpret the different ways that athletes keep track of their workouts to make it easier for them to monitor and track their performance. I think probably the ethical aspect of AI has probably been one of the hottest topics of late in the news recently. Whenever people talk about AI, it's not just the benefits and the amazing things that can happen with it, but it's also talking about some of the greatest minds, whether it's Elon Musk or Sam Altman, or even Steve Wozniak talking about how AI can pretty much destroy the world. I think the statistic that I've seen, or some studies, said 50% of engineers that are working on AI believe that there's a 10% chance that AI could do great harm. And while I think that it is a possibility, I think it definitely is very exciting from the media perspective to talk about the dangers of AI. From my personal perspective, kind of like what Kai said, in all the years that I've been in technology, I've never been this excited about something, about a medium, about a technology, about the opportunities that we have ahead of us. But I've also never been this scared. I'm absolutely frightened about how AI is going to fundamentally transform the way we work, the speed at which we work, and then also the things that people will be developing will, I believe, leave a lot of people that are not prepared and that do not have exposure to AI, the tools, the understanding of how to use this. It will leave a lot of people behind if they're unable to keep up with it. And hopefully, I don't think this is, people have talked about AI in the same vein as nuclear weapons. And while I think AI is very powerful, and I don't think it's in the same vein as destructive, but I think AI in the hands of the wrong people could lead to a lot of bad things happening. And a lot of people that are not aware of the powers of AI. I think your example, of the videos that can be generated, the images. I think there was an image of the Pope wearing a puffy jacket that people were sharing. Trump being arrested by a group of police officers that looks very believable. And to the untrained eye, they could full well believe in that and share it. And sadly, my mother sends me many of these things. So I know there are people that are out there that believe these things, and I think the ethical impact is going to be very great in how we manage this type of, in this level of disinformation. At the end of the day, though, I think governments are actively working on these things. I think we will have rules, and whether it's business practices or laws, there will be things in place. I am hopeful that we will have the guardrails in place to not let these things get too out of control. But at the same time, for all the great things that AI will do, there will be also a tremendous amount of damage and negative impacts that it will also cause.
Okay. Thank you, Jameson. We will get back to that later. So next, we'd like to have Phil Chen, Chief Content Officer of HTC, to share with us the best practices for AI startup founders and CEOs to succeed in this industry. Please, Phil.
Hi guys, my name is Phil Chen. I'm the founding partner at Raise Capital, a venture fund. I was just kind of, as people were talking, I was counting the number of AI companies I invested in. I started investing in this space 2010, 11. I was counting, I did 17 or 18 companies in this space, of which I've had 9 or 10 exits. And then I had one company that became a decacorn, one a unicorn, and also one company that raised over 200 million and it also went to zero. So I've experienced, you know, hugely successful AI companies to huge promise that went to zero, but also just AI companies that just built good tech that just got acquired, and which from a VC's perspective is not considered a huge success in terms of, you know, a tech company that doesn't really build a customer base but has an exit to a large company. What's fascinating to me is, you know, the first AI company I invested in was when I was at HTC. We invested in an NLP company called SoundHound. It's very much like Siri, kind of like Shazam, similar technology. And then later, when I joined Horizons Ventures at Hong Kong, we did it was when we invested in DeepMind. And DeepMind was a company that built AlphaGo. And I remember going to that Korea a match between AlphaGo and Lee Sedol, and it was also a groundbreaking moment for AI. But I think what's happening right now is, and I'll be interested to see what the panelists think, but I do think Gen AI is a very different type of AI than machine learning. The products are different, although the technology, the neural nets is quite similar. The business and the technology, the business and the products that will come out of it is so different. And so, of the exits I've had, for example, I had companies, a lot of them doing computer vision, a lot of them doing, there was one that was doing music AI that got acquired by Shutterstock. The computer vision companies got acquired by, you know, Google, Niantic, Roblox, things of that nature. But the other interesting thing for me, having observed this space, is, you know, all these fields, you know, natural language processing to computer vision to speech to text and robotics, these were all like, you know, very different fields, you know, and then suddenly 2018, 19, you know, all the Gen AI, they talk about this paper that Google published about transformers and, you know, the attention paper, and it all just became text. And then now, you know, these large language models can do all of that, you know. And I thought that was really fascinating to see. And now, and so that's why I do see, you know, this Gen AI kind of wave is fundamentally different than, you know, all the AI that I mostly invested in before, from a product perspective. And so, yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Phil. The first question I'd like to ask for of you is that which one of you is now under 35? Anyone under 35? Under the age of 35. Any one of you? No?
I wish.
Under 40?
No.
So you're all over 40, right? Okay, good. Because you guys look young. So my question was originally about, you know, I'd like to get your advice for your peers and for younger generation. Okay, so I'll still just shoot the question that, because I think you are just like 40-something, early 40s, right, for four of you. So compared to me, still younger because I'm 10 years older. So what would be the advice from you for your peers and younger generation regarding the opportunity you see from generative AI, and also the advice for older generation like me, the potential danger of not confronting of using generative AI? So which of you would like to take this question first? So Phil?
I'll start. There was a product I built actually in Taiwan. This is in 2013. It was an education tech product. It was called Learn Mode. And then in Chinese it's called 学习吧. And now this platform has over 1 million students in Taiwan. And the first integration we did was with a company called Wolfram Alpha. Wolfram Alpha is, kind of the engine behind Siri. Stephen Wolfram, the founder, actually did this great plugin on ChatGPT that allows it to, because Wolfram Alpha gives definitive answers, right? Whereas ChatGPT presents or it outputs something, that's very much like language, right? And it doesn't really map that language onto real world answers, right? It's not an answer kind of expert database. And so it's a very different computational model. But I do remember that, there were a lot of people worried about Wolfram Alpha because, it did all this amazing math calculations and computations, right? And the math teachers were worried that, if all the math students, and Taiwan is especially really good at math, right? In the world stage. But what Wolfram Alpha really allowed people to do was all the tedious computational stuff that you do in math, that does it for you, right? Whereas now you can, the math that became more important was how do I translate something in the world into symbolic form, and then the computer can do that symbolic calculation. And then that was what Stephen Wolfram, the founder of Wolfram, considered that was more math than doing computational, the usual kind of rote calculation stuff that you do in math. And so I would say roughly the same thing is happening right now. Kind of like I think Jameson, was talking about like accounting. I do see this. It's just a really powerful calculator, right? But this calculator is relevant not just in math, but in legal, if you're a doctor, if you're a journalist, right? It can really do a lot of, boring stuff that would take a lot of brain power, but also quite tedious, and then frees you up to be even more creative and even more human, I would say. And so I thought, the things that are happening in generative AI is not as surprising to me because there's been so many instances in the startup world where a lot of the automation is a great thing. It amplifies, especially if you're really good at what you do and you use a ChatGPT or Midjourney or any of the NVIDIA tools, you'll see that it'll help accelerate your workflow. It'll help expand your worldview on your domain knowledge. And actually, that's what I saw AlphaGo too. When that, I remember that first game. There was this one move, the famous move number 57 or something, and I remember walking into one of the expert rooms, and all the Korean experts are like, this machine finally made a mistake, right? Because in the past 3,000 years of people playing Go, nobody would make that type of move, right? And of course, eventually, that was the move, the deciding critical move that made it win. And then if you interview Lee Sedol, like, you know, a few months later, he studied that move, and then he learned that move, and he got better, right? And so, I mean, I think that's a great example of if you engage in this, and if you're really good in your domain, I think it can only make you better and it give you more ideas in your particular domain. So I'm more hopeful than fearful from it.
Okay, so Jimson or Kai would like to address this issue?
Yeah, when I think about AI, it's actually impacting. My son is 7 years old, and in his school, AI is already a topic that they discuss. And there's a lot of debate as to whether or not children should be using AI in school. And I think it's very divisive in that some think that they shouldn't be allowed to use it because then...
But who made the call? The parents, the teachers, or the kids themselves?
Well, it's definitely not the kids, but it's a open dialogue with teachers and parents. The school that our kids go to is a bit more progressive, and they see it as AI is a tool. It's a tool that everyone has to learn to use, and so even if it does their math homework for them, if it does some of the writing for them, they still have to understand the structure, they still have to understand the contents, and they have to be able to formulate these ideas. Whether or not they do the work to execute or to compute them to finality I don't think is the priority. And very similarly to how we grew up with internet access and more modernized computers, whereas our parents, their generation, did not grow up with computers or the internet. And if you think about how much has changed in just the 30 years since the advent of the internet to what we have today with the computational devices that we have with our mobile phones and how powerful they are, and now we have AI even on mobile, what our children will grow up with is something that I don't even think any of us in this room can comprehend. I cannot, all of us, everybody here is probably some expert in technology and has great knowledge and experience, but I don't think we can even foresee, let's say 15 years from now, what are the tools that our children are going to be using when they enter the workforce. And so I fully expect my children to embrace AI. Everyone in our company, we encourage them to use GPT, to use ChatGPT or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or any tools to help them, because essentially it's a tool. And if they don't learn how to use this tool, somebody else will, and they'll do their job better than them somewhere down the road.
Right, it's like saying that AI will not replace people, but people who use AI can replace people who do not, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Kai?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. I think is very interesting in education. But I saw a TED Talk recently by Saul Khan of Khan Academy. He's the co-founder of Khan Academy, which is online education. And it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to AI and how it can be used, right? Because a lot of times I think about AI, or it's talked about in the media. Everybody loves to talk about the doomsday scenario, right? The worst case scenario. AI is going to destroy humanity. And when I saw Khan's TED Talk, I thought it was really interesting because he was talking about education, and we're talking about how children might be affected. And he talked about how, what if you had a scenario where every student in the world had a tutor, a chatbot tutor. And why does that make a difference? Well, he went through the statistics and showed that children who are able to, or parents who are able to afford a tutor for their children do significantly better, right? Statistically better in education than children who don't have a tutor. So his example, imagine a chatbot, which is a tutor, and your child is maybe doing math or writing a paper and doesn't quite know how to do it, and so they can turn to their online tutor and say, can you give me the answer to this math question? And the tutor will come back and say, well, I can't give you the answer to it, but let me help you solve this problem, right? And so what's really interesting is that, yes, there are, sort of these doomsday scenario cases which everybody's scared about, but when, he really opened my eyes to think about, hey, well, there are some really amazing things. Imagine if every child in this world had a tutor that could help them through the education process, and then you can imagine some of the things that AI can really do to benefit humanity.
Okay, so yes, Ming-Yu, anything to add?
I come from a research background. So what's AI, why it's different to the traditional software? In the traditional past software, you design the flow, the logic, and the program executes for you. In the AI world, data determine the logic. So whenever the place that data, you can have data to help you to define your flow. AI will be deployed there. Right? So it's not gonna just be chatbots or search or image generation. It will be everything, including the chip design, layout design, all kind of industry that data have been collected, stored, and they can be leveraged to kind of improve the workflow. It cannot be everywhere. So be prepared to kind of embrace this Gen AI. And the reason Gen AI is more popular is most of us are hired to do the generation tasks. We are not just hired for do the recognition tasks, right? We need to generate something to create value. So yeah, Gen AI cannot just be everywhere so be the one who use it.
Okay. And I'm sure our audience, a lot of our audience are from this startup ecosystem or startup circle. So I'm interested in knowing that from your insight that how would this generative AI help the startup ecosystem? For example, like if I'm going to start up a company today, how can I leverage the services or products from the current or upcoming service or product to help me start up a company? Or if I'm a angel investor or a venture capitalist, I want to look for targets, potential candidates. How can I use this generative AI service to help me find or screen the potential? So yeah, I'd like to get that question from you. Any panelists like to address this question? Jemison?
I mean, I haven't used anything specifically for the investment side, although I've invested in companies. But when we think about how to use AI, let's say from a company perspective, a startup perspective, whether it's sales and outreach, we can use GPT or OpenAI or Bard or something to collate a list of sales leads, have all the contact information, have their website. We can have GPT or whatever AI tool we use to go and generate an understanding of what their business is, what language they're using, and write a sales cold email and automate that through, let's say a list of 500 customer leads. And so instead of somebody having to manually do that, for a startup, that's a tremendous savings in time. And I think what AI does is allows us to get to the execution part much faster and spend less time on the setup process that typically takes a lot of manpower or effort to get up and running with.
Okay, thank you, Jemison. Maybe.
I recently talked to a VC, and they had an interesting kind of program they had everybody in their firm do. So, Google's famous for like this 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% you do your work, and 20% you can do anything you want. They wanted everybody in their firm to do that, but that 20% is to experiment with, any generative AI program that could help anything from their blogging to their sales to their marketing to their pitch decks to everything, whatever role you are in that venture firm, you would spend 20% of your time building out or kind of building a prototype of how that workflow will change or how you're going to use that new workflow. And so I thought that was a really smart kind of model. And I do think, as a general rule, all companies should do that.
My last question before I wrap up is that do you expect there to be a future unicorn in the generative AI here in Taiwan? If there is, which area, might be? So, sir, Kai?
Yeah, I hope so. I think there's a lot of activity going on in the startup space here in Taiwan. So I definitely see startups maybe before working on something that was adjacent and now integrating AI into their offering, which is really great to see. As an example, one of the startups that we're working with, 886 Studios, with our venture studio, they're called Miso AI. And the service, the product that they're offering is to businesses. They originally started with what I'll call cold start marketing, which is someone comes to my website and without knowing anything about you and not having your profile, any background information, I can start immediately profiling you through AI and recommending things to you. And a lot of companies are using their product. But what these companies are also very interested in, a lot of commerce and content companies, like Fox is one of their customers, is how do we integrate ChatGPT and all of this AI into what we're doing, right? Fox, as an example, they want to serve up content to you that they think you're going to find interesting. And how can they use AI in a way that really helps their readers maximize the value of the content that they provide? So they all want to integrate the technology, but they're afraid to, because the companies are afraid to, because they're worried about things like hallucination, which is when AI kind of goes off the rails. So Miso AI, as part of their offering, is now working on technology that will keep AI, Gen AI, on rails so that these companies don't have to worry about implementing it. If I go to fox.com and I start reading news and I start asking questions and AI goes off the rail, that's a bad user experience. But Miso is helping them utilize the technology in a way that will make it a very positive experience for their users. So those are just some of the really interesting ways that we see Gen AI being used.
Okay, Jameson, your bet?
I haven't seen any companies that are in Taiwan, but there is one company I think that they're doing kind of a makeup or sort of it's like a beauty cam.
Perfect?
Yeah. I think if anything, if they continue down that path, the filters that we've already seen are...
They're already published in NASDAQ.
Right, yeah,
okay,
so,
but,
within that realm.
A little bit shy of unicorn, but very close. That's the right bet, okay. So, and Phil?
Actually, I think I know of one. There's a company called Meta Theory that is building games. And,
I agree, and he's sitting right there.
Yeah, this founder, Kevin Lin.
It's not really a Gen AI company, but I'm sure they're using Gen AI.
But they are using AI. They are using AI. So, yeah. I'm betting on that one.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. And
me too.
Ming-Yu, what about you?
That's one, but I'm not in the startup space, so difficult for me to do the prediction. But I hope there will be one or more. Yeah.
All right, it will be difficult to wrap up because it's quite diversified topics, and like to thank the panelists for their insight and sharing. But I still like to conclude by using what Jensen Wang, giving at the commencement speech at National Taiwan University last Saturday. He said that with this AI technology advancing so quickly, run, don't walk. Okay, so you're either running for food or running from becoming food. Okay, that's what he advised for the students and for people who are interested in AI. So that's will be my conclusion as well. So thank you, and thank you the audience. Okay.
All right, thank you, John, for leading this discussion, and we'll have a great conversation from different aspects. And thank you once again to Ming-Yu, Kai, Jameson, and Phil for joining us at this panel discussion. So that's the end for this panel discussion. Thank you for joining us once again. And not forgetting our audiences, we appreciate you being here with us the whole afternoon since the beginning. Take care and see you next time. And thank you to our panelists and moderator. Thank you.